To make this a 40-minute read for text to voice, we need a significant amount of text, roughly 5,000 to 6,000 words. I will now expand and optimize Shadow War to its full cinematic potential. I will build out the atmosphere of the underground city, deepen the tension in the breakfast bar, expand the tactical details of the space battle, and explore the psychological aftermath for Emma and Alex. Shadow War. The aroma of fresh coffee and warm donuts drifted lazily through the humid, recycled air of the underground corridors. It was a scent that didn't quite belong in a world of steel and rock, but it was the only thing that made the deep city feel like a home. The tunnels were a labyrinth of copper wiring, heavy reinforced plating, and the constant, rhythmic clatter of food trays. Emma wiped her hands on her stained apron, her movements mechanical and practiced. She stood behind the counter of the terminal, a small breakfast bar tucked away in a corner of Sector 4, nestled miles beneath the planet's surface. To the casual observer, she was just another face in the subterranean crowd. But Emma knew the truth. Above her, the world was a carefully guarded secret, an intricate web of tunnels, hidden hangars, and shimmering portals that bridged the gaps between worlds. Here, in this hidden labyrinth, the air carried the weight of the extraordinary. Every hushed whisper in her shop felt like a piece of a puzzle she wasn't supposed to solve. She had learned early that beneath the surface of normalcy, the universe was spinning on a different axis. It was drifting toward a chaos that the public wasn't ready to face, secrets that would curl the hair of anyone who dared to look too close at the maintenance logs of the orbital elevators. Today, the atmosphere in the shop was heavy. The usual morning chatter, complaints about the water rations or the dim lighting, was gone. In its place was a strange, vibrating undertone of anticipation. Emma moved down the counter, pouring coffee for men with haunted eyes. She caught snippets of conversations that shouldn't have been happening in a diner. "The gate is pulsing," one man whispered, his hands trembling around a ceramic mug. "Mars isn't responding to the handshake signals," another replied. "The Shadow War is coming to the front door." Emma focused on her work, but her heart was beginning to pace. Across the room, tucked into a booth at the far back, sat Alex. He was finishing his third cup of black coffee, staring at a small holographic news feed that showed nothing but technical difficulties, banners. As a high-altitude shuttle pilot, Alex knew the sky and the cold vacuum beyond it better than almost anyone in the sector. But lately, the lines between his routine transport duties and the looming threat of the Void Guard had blurred. He wore no badges. He wore no stripes. He was a shadow in a standard-issue flight jacket, but Emma knew the look in his eyes. It was the look of a man who had seen things through a viewport that shouldn't exist. Emma walked over to his booth, a fresh, glazed donut held in a napkin. She set it on his plate without a word. Alex didn't look up immediately. "You're heading out again, aren't you?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible over the hum of the nearby ventilation fans. Alex finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, weary from a lack of sleep and a surplus of adrenaline. "The portal's acting up, Emma. It's not just a fluctuation in the power grid this time. They're seeing signatures, massive, rhythmic ripples in the fabric of the vacuum. It's like a heartbeat, but it's too big. It's an invasion signature. We've been calling it the Shadow War for years to keep people calm, but the shadows are stepping into the light." Just as the words left his mouth, the ground beneath them didn't just vibrate, it buckled. A deep, bone-shaking groan echoed through the rock, followed by a violent jolt that sent plates sliding off tables and shattered several mugs against the floor. The overhead lights flickered, turned a harsh emergency red, and began to buzz with an angry, electrical whine. Emma gripped the edge of the booth to stay upright. This wasn't a pump failure. This was a kinetic impact on the planetary crust. "They're here," Alex whispered, his voice cold. He stood up so quickly his chair clattered back and struck the stone wall. The intercom system, usually reserved for mundane shift changes, erupted with a sound that sent a chill through the room, a frantic, high-pitched scream of a siren, followed by a voice that sounded like it was coming from the edge of a breakdown. "All combat-capable personnel to battle stations. This is an Omega-level breach. The swarm has bypassed the orbital rings. They are in the atmosphere. I repeat, the swarm is in the atmosphere. This is not a drill." Emma didn't panic. Instead, something shifted in her. The waitress mask fell away, revealing a cold, tactical precision. She reached behind her back and unclipped the ties of her apron, letting it fall to the floor. Beneath it, she wasn't wearing civilian clothes. She was wearing a dark, reinforced G-suit, the kind worn by interceptor pilots. She had been the tactical secondary for Hangar 7 for 3 years, a sleeper agent in her own city. She reached under the counter and pulled out a heavy flight helmet and a sidearm. She looked at Alex, her face a mask of steel. "Alex, get to the interceptors. I've got the keys to the prototype in Hangar 7. We aren't letting them reach the civilian levels." They burst out of the diner and into the main corridor. The quiet underground city was gone, replaced by a nightmare of screaming sirens and the heavy, rhythmic thud of armored boots. Security teams were sprinting toward the surface elevators, their rifles held high. Emma and Alex pushed through the crowd, their focus narrow. They reached the high-speed lift to Hangar 7. As the lift shot upward, the pressure in their ears spiked. When the doors finally hissed open, they weren't in the city anymore. They were on the edge of the world. The hangar doors were wide open, and for the first time, Emma saw the sky. It was a bruised, sickly purple, choked by a swirling, black mass of organic-looking ships. They moved like locusts, diving from the clouds and raking the surface with beams of dark energy. The Shadow War was no longer a whisper, it was a deafening roar. "Go, go, go!" Alex yelled over the sound of a nearby anti-aircraft battery. They scrambled into the cockpit of the Void Runner, a sleek, twin-engine interceptor designed for the vacuum but capable of atmospheric combat. Alex took the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the startup sequence. Emma took the seat behind him, her fingers dancing across the holographic tactical grid. Reactor online. Shields at 100%. Weapons hot, Emma reported, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. "Alex, we've got 4 swarm scouts diving on our position. They're trying to collapse the hangar roof." "Not today," Alex grunted. He slammed the throttle forward. The ship didn't just move. It leapt. The G-force pressed them deep into their ergonomic seats as they cleared the hangar at 500 knots. The battle in the sky was a chaotic ballet of fire and metal. The swarm ships were jagged, obsidian things that seemed to absorb the light around them. Void Guard ships, humanity's last line, darted between them like silver needles, their beams cutting through the purple haze. Every hit to their shields sent a shuddering vibration through the Void Runner's frame, a scream of protesting metal. "They're targeting the colony transports," Emma shouted, her eyes fixed on the tactical overlay. "Look at the trajectory. They're ignoring the military targets. They want the civilians." "I see them," Alex said, his voice dropping into that cold, lethal calm that only came during a dogfight. He rolled the ship, diving through a cloud of debris as a nearby cruiser exploded. "We have to pull them off. Emma, give me everything we've got in the forward capacitors. Diverting power now. We're going to be blind on the rear sensors, Alex. I don't plan on letting them get behind us." Alex banked the ship into a sharp, gut-wrenching turn that would have snapped a lesser pilot's neck. He lined up the lead swarm scout in his physical crosshairs. He didn't wait for the computer to lock. He fired. The kinetic cannons roared, a rhythmic thumping that echoed through the cockpit. The obsidian ship disintegrated in a shower of black shards and green fire. But for every one they killed, 3 more seemed to emerge from the clouds. The scale of the invasion was staggering. This wasn't a skirmish, it was an extinction event. Suddenly, the communication channel hissed with static, a high-frequency whine that made Emma wince. Then, a new voice broke through, commanding, resonant, and filled with a strange, magnetic authority. "This is Commander Alex Blake to all units. Fall back to the primary gate. We are losing the atmosphere. We must consolidate our fire on the lead cruiser's ventral port. It is the only way to collapse their coordination. We have one shot at this, and we have to take it now." Emma's eyes went wide. She looked at the back of Alex's head, then back to the comms unit. Alex had been the commander all along. The man sitting in her diner was the architect of the defense. "You heard the man," Emma yelled, her fingers flying to recalibrate the targeting sensors. "Alex, I'm locking onto the flagship. It's that massive, jagged spine at 12 o'clock. "I've got it, Alex," Commander Blake replied. He pushed the engines to 110%. The Void Runner screamed as it tore through the atmosphere, a streak of silver in a sea of purple fire. The enemy flagship was a mountain of metal and shadow, nearly a mile long. As they approached, the defensive fire from the cruiser was so thick it looked like a wall of light. Alex wove the ship through the gaps, his instincts guiding him through the impossible. Targeting, targeting, Emma muttered, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Lock confirmed. Blake, the ventral port is open. Fire now. The beam that left their ship wasn't a standard laser. It was a blinding streak of pure, concentrated energy, a piece of the portal itself weaponized. It struck the swarm cruiser's core with the force of a dying star. The explosion was silent at first, a blossoming sphere of white light that consumed everything in its path. Then the sound hit, a roar that seemed to vibrate the very atoms of their bodies. The enemy flagship buckled. Its internal systems cascaded in a series of blinding eruptions, tearing the obsidian hull apart from the inside out. The remains sweat. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind an ache in his bones that felt like it would never go away. He looked at Emma through the reflection in the glass. "You okay?" "I think so," she whispered. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking. "Did we win?" "Alec, they're not done. They were testing us. Prepare for the next wave. It could come at any moment." Across the system, the remnants of humanity's fleet began their slow, painstaking retreat toward the safety of the underground hangars. Repair crews were already being dispatched to the surface to patch the leaks in the crust and reinforce the defense batteries. The victory was hollow. They had pushed the enemy back, but the cost was visible in the columns of smoke rising from the colony sectors. Emma looked out at the horizon. She saw the ruins of the surface cities, the graveyard of things too large to understand. The realization hit her then, the same realization that Sam had in the old world, and Alara had on PX-47. Scale meant everything. They were small. They were tiny sparks in a very dark room. The universe was a chessboard, and they had only just survived the opening move. As the ship turned back toward Hangar 7, Alex looked out into the eternal blackness of space. He knew the peace they cherished was an illusion. The next encounter would be even more brutal. The universe's silence wasn't a comfort, it was a warning. It was an ominous promise that the chaos was never truly gone. Somewhere in the dark, unseen and patient, the enemy watched. They had seen the silver ships. They had felt the sting of the energy beam. And they would adapt. Emma sat back and closed her eyes, trying to remember the smell of fresh coffee and warm donuts. It felt like a lifetime ago. She knew that tomorrow, she might be back behind the counter, serving moments of normalcy to a terrified population. But she would keep her flight suit on under her apron. Because the Shadow War was just beginning. And in a world of giants and voids, the only thing that mattered was the people small enough to care, and stubborn enough to keep fighting. The horizon was waiting, and this time, they wouldn't just watch it. They would be ready for whatever stepped across it next. End of story. Next step. This version is now heavily expanded for a long-form listening experience. Would you like me to generate a cinematic, cartoon-style image of the Void Runner Interceptor flying through the purple, swarm-choked sky?